Welcome to Secure Freedom Radio. This is Frank Gaffney, your host and guide for, what I think of as an intelligence briefing on the war for the free world. I've come to regard very highly a man who is in a key position in the front lines of that war on Capitol Hill, Dr. John Fleming, a representative of the people of the 4th District of Louisiana in the United States House of Representatives. He serves on its Armed Services Committee, notably on its subcommittees on strategic forces and tactical air and land forces. He is also a co-founder and co-chairman of the Congressional Long Range Strike Caucus, all of which will be directly relevant to our topic one today. Also, a former Navy medical officer. Congressman Fleming, welcome back. It's always good to have you with us, sir. Thank you for all of this service, both that you've rendered in the past and that you're rendering today. It's good to have you.
Well, thanks, Frank. It's always a pleasure to be on with you, and I was excited about speaking with you today.
Good. Well, thank you, as am I. Listen, one thing I was particularly excited about is that it seems as though there may actually at long last be some movement towards modernizing a very important part of our military capabilities, namely our long-range strike capabilities, through a decision announced yesterday on a new manned bomber. Can you tell us a little bit about both kind of the importance of modernizing that leg of the triad and otherwise giving ourselves strike capabilities we don't currently have, and the decision to award the contract to Northrop Grumman?
Right. Happy to do that. First of all, as you know, Frank, the Air Force Global Strike Command is headquartered in my district. It has control of all bombers in the entire Air Force nuclear enterprise, which includes, of course, ballistic missiles. And so this is very near and dear to my heart. The current fleet is mainly B-52s, as you know, and still they're very operative. They're doing a great job out there. But look, grandsons are now flying these things of the original pilots, and eventually they're going to have to be replaced. And so we've been working on the development of the long-range strike bomber, the follow-on to that, and that means that we will see in coming years the new long-range strike bomber rolling off the assembly lines. Now, for a lot of people, they think a bomber is something that, like in the old World War II days, it goes overhead and drops dumb bombs. But the modern concept of the bomber, as you know, is it works sort of like a aircraft carrier in the air. It can deliver heavy, but very, very precise laser-guided munitions, and can deliver that almost at any time, anywhere around the world. So it's just as important today as it was in World War II.
But a lot more lethal.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, this is a point that's often lost on most of us, is the difference between those precision-guided munitions, which get their targets virtually every time, and those dumb bombs, as you say, Congressman Fleming, that often didn't. Let me ask you this. This is a long-term program. It's a hugely expensive program. At that, they're talking about trying to bring these aircraft in at over $500 million a pop. Knowing what you know, Congressman Fleming, having wrestled with the budget demons on Capitol Hill, is it likely, in your judgment, that the funding will be there for this project over the decades, maybe multiple decades of time that it'll take to bring it to fruition?
Well, I certainly hope so, Frank. I mean, you know, the pattern has been that we get excited about a new type of system, and then it fades. We have not constructed nearly the number of F-22s that we plan to. We're seeing the same thing happen with the F-35s. However, if you think about it, the long-range strike bomber is taking off the shelf technologies that have already been developed, in many cases with these other two platforms. So I think the chance of cost run-ups, as long as we put out the number of units we expect, which would be about 80 to 100, should be much more predictable and be much more controlled. I think there's less experimentation and less cutting-edge technology. It's more about putting together what we know today and what we can do today, which the B-52 does not do. As you know, the B-52 in many cases has 1950s technology.
Though there have been upgrades over the years, of course, but it is an ancient platform. There's no question about it. Congressman, speaking of the context in which all of this is taking place, you've recently had your National Defense Authorization Act vetoed by the president. I know you've called for it to be overridden. We're also given to understand that there will likely be a vote on a 2-year budget bill that will lock in, essentially, some growth for the national defense, but also considerable growth for non-defense spending. How do you see all of this sorting out in terms of the authorities that are needed as well as the funding for projects like this, among other critical defense priorities?
Well, I'm very disappointed that the president vetoed the NDAA. It was an excellent bill. It was a bipartisan bill, and there's actually more votes in the Senate than necessary to override it, and we're right on the bubble to override it in the House. So I think our first objective is going to be to bring it back up again and see if we can get the overriding votes, and then it's a done deal. The president's out of it. But also, even though I greatly disagree with this budget that we're going to be voting on today, and I'm going to vote against it, I do expect it to pass. It's going to have primarily liberal Democrat priorities in it, and unfortunately it's actually going to include a little bit of a cut for defense below what we really had hoped for from our NDAA. But it's going to fall about $5 billion short, which is not huge in terms of when you're talking billions and trillions of dollars, but still, and in the second year it makes up for that, but nonetheless, I would have liked to have seen us do more, Frank. I just think that we continue to deplete our military, and as you know, we're beginning to act over in Syria and on the ground in Iraq, and that's going to require more cost, and I think we need better funding for our young men and women in uniform.
Apart from the numbers themselves, Congressman John Fleming of Louisiana, do you feel that the idea of locking the Congress in on these numbers, both, again, defense and for other spending, for 2 years is inadvisable, or is that a good idea for planning purposes and some stability?
Well, that is one of the few things I do like about it, is it's a 2-year budget, and it creates minimums, floors, if you will, that neither side can violate. So we could actually plus up in the process of the next year or two, but we can't go below, and it creates more predictability for our war planners and also for the contractors. So I like that piece of it, and there is some trade-off. Even with less spending, if you have more predictability, you can actually spend more wisely and get more bang for your buck. So that part of it I like. I don't like the fact that we're not dealing with the need to reform entitlements. We're increasing social spending, and at the same time doing nothing to increase military spending, which is so vitally needed.
Especially in the wake of years now of sequestration and some $1 trillion or so, I guess, that's come out of defense over the 10 years. Let me ask you, Congressman, in closing, and very quickly, I know you have been a stalwart critic of the, I call it the Obama bomb deal. In light of what's happened since Congress acted or failed to act, more accurately, on the deal, do you think that this thing has gotten even more ugly, even more problematic, even more contrary to the national interest? And if so, what should we be doing now?
Well, I definitely agree. The Iran deal was a disaster. It was the worst possible deal one could make. You could only say that our negotiating position was simply, we'll take anything as long as we get a deal. The good news is that it really was not confirmed by Congress in any way. And so, in my view, the deal is no better than the end of this presidency and the next president takes office.
We'll be watching that closely, needless to say, as I know will you, in a leadership role in the United States House of Representatives. Congressman Dr. John Fleming of Louisiana, thank you very much for your time today, and we'll look forward to talking with you again soon. Next up, Dalibor Rohak from the American Enterprise on Europe, its future, and us. Straight ahead.